The Electoral Commission says it will no longer tie over voting to the number of persons on the register, but rather the number of people verified to vote.
So actually tying the definition of overvoting to the number of people on the polling station is what creates the problem.
But experts say that could create more confusion during the elections. The EC also intends to bring in members of the Ghana Bar Association and the Institute of Chartered Accountants at the constituency collation centers to help in collating results to avoid errors.
When you are tallying in the collation process to remove errors, we think it may be beneficial to have another layer of checks.
And that also, according to experts, has its own pros and cons. There have been questions about the credibility of this year's elections, considering the confusion that ensued after the 2012 elections. But the EC says these measures, among others, is aimed at safeguarding the integrity of the electoral process, which has been a subject of debate in the country. Questioning, is that all there is to restoring confidence in the Electoral Commission? Are these reforms exactly what the EC needs to bring the Commission back on its feet? We'll be speaking with the two major political parties, the NDC and the MPP, and also gauge the mood of an election observer, Codell, plus an independent view on these matters. This is today's big story. My name is Aisha Brian. Starting this year, the EC says anyone desiring to serve the Electoral Commission in the capacity of an electoral officer must have a higher educational background. Such persons will be made to take an oath before a magistrate, so that in the event they foul the law, they will be punished. Also, an electoral officer who violates election regulations in the upcoming December polls will face up to 2 years jail term, according to the EC. We can listen to the EC Chair Charlotte say on overvoting.
As you know, when overvoting happens, the Electoral Commission would cancel the results of that polling station, and the results would only, the elections would only be rerun if it is significant to the final outcome. Now, there were definitions that tied overvoting to the number of people on the register of that polling station, which would bring up the issue that has come up. If you have, let's say, 900 people at the polling station, it cannot be that all of them came to vote. So actually tying the definition of overvoting to the number of people on the polling station is what creates the problem. What we're saying is, we informed IPAC last year that the definition of overvoting that the EC would apply would be where the number of valid votes in the box exceeds the number of people who are verified to vote. So what we're actually doing closes that gap, because it ensures that if you have 900 people on a polling station and only 820 came to vote, you can't pad it by 80, because the results are not tied to the number of people who are on the register, but to the number of people who have been verified to vote. And the number of people who have been verified to vote is a fact that anyone who was part of the process can confirm at any time, either by going to the machines or by also counting the number of manual verification forms. So it's a tighter definition.
We can do some analysis now. On the phone line, I have two fine gentlemen. One is Dr. Eric Odrosai. He's a lawyer. He's a research fellow and dean of the graduate studies at the Institute of Local Governance. And on the other line is Mr. Kofi Ahin. He's a national coordinator of Codell. the domestic election observers. Good evening to you, gentlemen.
Good evening, Aisha.
Okay, I'll start with Dr. Odro-Osai. Now, Governor, the number of persons on the register, we're told by the EC, will no longer be tied to the issue of overvoting, but rather what the EC seeks to do is that the number of people verified to vote at the particular polling station is what will determine overvoting. I mean, that's how the EC intends to correct the confusion of overvoting that usually ensues during elections. Good strategy?
To some extent, but if we want that strategy to work, then we should start by saying that no verification, no vote. We go and then implement it to the latter. In that case, then you can use that one as a basis for defining or determining over or under voting. Because if you want to rely on only those who were verified by the machine, how about those who were not verified by the machine? But for some reason, the agent and everybody there has agreed that they should vote, though they were not verified by the machine. And it's allowable by the electoral regulations. So yes, it's a good strategy, but the basics should be there. And the basics should be that we should go to fully implement the principle of no verification, no vote. In that case, then we can use that one to define overvote.
But already we are having issues with that. Is this something you think can be dealt with during the elections so that we can have a fantastic idea of clearing the confusion of overvoting?
Definitely. If we insist on it and the parties agree to that at IPAC and the whole of Ghana agreed to that and enough sensitization and education is conducted, we should be able to do that. Else, I'm afraid the definition proposed by the electoral commissioner or chairperson of the electoral commission will not work. Because if we have votes being cast by those who were verified by the machine and those who were also not verified, and then there is an overvoting at a particular polling center, and you want to define the overvoting by those who were only verified, you are not being fair to the system. So I think that yes, it's a brilliant idea. We should work towards ensuring that we will be able to expand that definition to include the number of voters who were on the voters register. If we go by that definition, that will really help. And then when we go by that definition, then we should put in place systems to ensure that we quality assure those who will vote. And here, those who will vote include those who were verified and those who were approved and or agreed upon by the polling agent at that particular polling station.
I'll have you hold Dr. Odro-Osai and speak the thoughts of Mr. Kofi Ahin, who is the coordinator of CODEO. Often overvoting is one of the issues we've had to deal with during elections. In fact, it's one of the issues that led us to court in 2012. So are you satisfied with this new strategy of the Electoral Commission that seeks to move away from the register, from the polling station, and then rather tie overvoting to the number of people who were verified to vote at that particular polling station?
Hello?
Yes, Mr. Ahin, you are on air.
Okay. I totally agree with what Dr. Stein said. You know, I understand overvoting to be the number that is in the register that has been picked. If you go to the polling station, you get to the presiding officer, whoever is in charge, they take your name, you are verified, and you are given the ballot. Okay, so you go and put it inside. The one who also goes there and is not verified, according to what we want to do this year, they are also going to be approved, or they are going to be given the chance to do so by some people who are going to support him or say that, yes, he is the one standing there. So what I will say is that the most important thing is to get the names of the people, whether both verified by the machine and also
verified manually
by the witnesses. You know, that should be to account for the number of people who have been ticked in the register at the end of the day to have their votes tallying the number of ballots that are in the box. What I'm saying is that those who are verified and those who are going to be approved by the witnesses, have both gone through the system and have been verified in a way. So at the end of the day, the number of, when they do it, they will take in the register that Kofi has come, is being given the chance. So the number of that are in the register should be able to tally the number of ballots that are in the box. If the number in the ballot exceeds that have been ticked in the ballot in the register, then you can call it overvoting. But you cannot just use the verified people's numbers to determine it. That would be wrong.
And that could breed more confusion. Yes, Mr. Ahin, if I get you, that would be wrong, and that could even bring more confusion when election is ongoing.
But what I'm saying is that, you know, there are people who are going to be verified by the machine.
Exactly so.
Manually verified.
Exactly.
They should be put together.
So the issue is, how do we even justify those who will be manually verified? That will be one of the questions we'll be asking at that time. So of course, it's a good strategy, but it needs to be looked at properly. Is that the point you're making?
Yes, that will mean that it means that at the IPAC meeting, maybe they all have to agree that people are going to be verified manually. If that is agreed and it's going to be adopted, then of course the issue of overvoting or whatever should be determined by the ticks that are in the register to tally with the number of votes that are in the box. If the number of the votes in the box are more than what have been ticked in the register, then there's something wrong. But if we use only the verified, whilst you allow people to manually vote, then you're going to have a problem.
Okay, so there's this other problem we've had over the years, that is when results are being collated. In fact, that is where the danger comes. That's where the problems emanate. Now, the EC says to avoid some of these things, they are bringing in members of the Ghana Bar Association and the Institute of Chartered Accountants at the constituency collation centers to help in collating the results. How does this come across to you?
Yes, I think this should be commended if it's successfully implemented. I'm sure they want to go the Nigerian way. The Nigerians made sure they had very, very qualified people, prominent people, people who, apart from the fact that maybe they'll be taught the way this thing should go, also are knowledgeable to be put at the various centers or whether the counting centers, I don't know where they want to put them. But if it is that is going to be done, then we should commend the EC and we should even encourage them to get such qualified people to be doing it, so that at the end of the day, we don't have problems like 27 turning to 72 and that kind of thing, where you had some people who didn't know they were writing anything. So it's something commendable, and we should encourage them to get the right people. I think it's one of the recommendations made by the Reform Committee that it's the polling staff. The poll staff should be qualified, and they should have something about C or whatever. So that at the end of the day, we get very qualified people to man these centers, or to man these counting centers, or the collation centers, so that we get the right message to the people.
This brings to mind the issue that the Electoral Commission requiring that whoever wants to be an electoral official must have higher educational background. We'll deal with that, but let me have you hold and speak with Dr. Odro. Doc, there are many who feel that bringing in the Ghana Bar Association and the Chartered Institute of Accountants to help in collating the results is a good idea, but it could also have its own problems.
That is very true, and fortunately, I am a member of both associations. I'm a member of the Ghana Bar Association and a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants.
Great.
It has its own advantages and disadvantages. So the disadvantages are that we should be very careful we don't bring people who are more aligned to certain political parties.
Exactly so.
The second aspect of it is that, yes, if we want to allow it to work, then we would expect that the EC works with the professional bodies so that persons who make themselves available to support the process will be subjected to the ethical standards or the professional standards of, for instance, the DBA, as well as the professional standards of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, together with the conditions of service or the requirements of the EC. In that case, we will be double sure that persons from the Institute of Chartered Accountants and the members of the bar who will support the process in such a way that it will benefit the whole of Ghana. Indeed, it is something that has been discussed at the Institute of Chartered Accountants conference, and I know that the Ghana Bar Association will also be prepared to support it, because all of us want to see that Ghana, we have a credible, free and fair election, but we should approach it cautiously and make sure that we do it well.
Right. So, talking about this, we're coming to the fact that the Electoral Commission want people who will be electoral officers to have higher education background. And one school of thought will say, what difference will it make? Because whether they are highly educated or not, they still will undergo some training. What difference will it make?
Yes, it will make a lot of difference in my view. I think that if your level of education is very high to some extent, maybe a minimum of a secondary school certificate, you would be able to understand the figures involved. You would know the risk involved in signing or applying your signature to something. You would understand the implications of whatever you do. Aside from that, we shouldn't also lose sight of the fact that we can have people who are highly educated but yet corrupt. So it all boils down to the education, the sanctions regime we put in the system, the agreement we enter into with those people, and then even the regulation, the way we can tighten the regulations and then orient them better. It's all about orienting the people, because you can have a highly educated person there. If the person will be corrupt, the person will be corrupt. So we need highly educated people, yes, but we should be able to properly orient them. We should tighten the legal regime. We should come up with appropriate sanctions with him in such a way that if you are found culpable one way or the other, after your capacity have been adequately dealt, you will be dealt with appropriately.
So, tightening the legal regime, the EC says an electoral officer who violates election regulations in the December polls will face up to 2 years jail term. I mean, that should restore confidence, right?
That should restore confidence. But then, let us see how the application goes. Provided the EC will be quick to support the prosecuting of any of these people who breaches the law. You know, it is easier said than done. But it is good. I would have wished that we move it to 5 years, so that it will send strong signals that we are not prepared to accept certain things, we are not prepared to compromise our elections for anything.
Well, many thanks to Dr. Odro Sign, is Dean of Graduate Studies at the Institute of Local Governance Studies. I'll go back to Mr. Ahin, who is the National Coordinator of CODEO. You've heard the discussion. The Electoral Commission seeks to take highly educated electoral officers for this year's elections. Good idea. But how will this resolve our issues? Because they are also human as the other people.
I'm getting it so faintly. Hello?
Hello, Mr. Ahin. You are still on today's big story.
You were talking to me, but it's so faint. I didn't get it right.
I'm saying that the Electoral Commission seeks to employ electoral officers who have higher educational background. The question is, what difference will it make? How will that resolve our issues regarding they're also human as all the other people they used to engage in the previous elections?
Yeah, the Electoral Commission is appointing people with a higher education background. The advantage here is that it's going to improve on their performance at the various centers, wherever they may be engaged. There are cases where people have been asked to go and do this kind of job. Some cannot even write well, some cannot read, and then, you know, they are just put there. So they should be people who are trainable, people who can understand the issues that are at stake at the various levels of the election.
Right.
So if they are going to get highly educated people, or people at least who have some kind of education that is commendable, it will improve the electoral process. And so, once again, I think it's also coming from the reforms that are supposed to be done. CODEO, for example, has set it upon itself to be following this kind of thing. We have a program where we are going to be going to these centers to find out about the quality of staff that are going to be used for this kind of training. To really find out that the corporation is living up to its promise of getting highly educated people to be able to do this job. It will augur well for the performance of the EC and to also add the confidence that the public will have to have in them. So I think it's in the right direction.
But one other thing the Electoral Commission seeks to do is to, within 21 days, publish the list of polling stations and their codes and locations, and also make the list available to all political parties. And then they also seek to publish it on the Commission's website. Will this make any difference? I mean, what will this add to the beauty of the elections?
Come again.
What the Electoral Commission seeks to do, I mean, in the upcoming election, is to publish the list of polling stations 21 days to elections. They're going to publish the list of polling stations and their codes and locations, and also make the list available to political parties, and then publish it on the website, the Commission's website. And I'm asking, do we need it? Is it necessary?
Yes, this is actually in the CI 91, and I think it's good. The law is saying that 1 day to the time of the election, the names of the polling stations and their locations and everything should be published. And it will be good for not even the political parties, but even the citizenry, the voters, so that at least you'll be able to know in advance where you are going to cast your ballot. It's important for the parties also to use it, at least in their campaign. You know, the polling station list is going to give them a clue as to, for example, how many people are in this center, how many people are going to vote here, and then it will help them a lot. So knowing, and I remember this was an issue during the last election where, you know, the chief was raising issues about certain polling stations that were added or were not found in the list, and so on. So getting the list to the political parties before the election is, I think, something that also ought to be commended. It's already in the law, and if they're able to do it, it will augur well for the election that is going to come.
Well, many thanks to Mr. Kofi Ahin, is the national coordinator of the Coalition for Domestic Election Observers. Many thanks for your time on today's big story. We can listen to the chair of the Electoral Commission, Madam Charlotte Osei, once again talking about how they're going to bring the Ghana Bar Association, members, and then the members of the Institute of Chartered Accountants to assist in collating results at the collation centers so that they can avoid errors.
Again, it's something that we're looking at. We've had some engagement with the Ghana Bar Association and with the Chartered Accountants, and no, it's not exactly the JAGA model, because JAGA is running a federal system, and so you have state electoral commissioners, and so their structure is quite different from ours. And you also have to take your political culture into account when you are doing, if you are trying to copy an example from someone. I don't think that in Nigeria they have, what are groups called? TAIN, and then there's another one, TESCON, and all this. So you can't just, we can't take everything they're doing. But what we're trying to see is when we finish with all the main things we have to do with elections and the commission approves, is to have at the constituency collation centers members of the Ghana Bar and the Institute of Chartered Accountants. When you are tallying in the collation process to remove errors, we think it may be beneficial to have another layer of checks. So you would have the lawyers checking that the forms are properly filled, properly signed off, and then you'd have the accountants also making sure that, as a lawyer, I don't think we're very good at counting. We'll have the accountants also check and make sure that the numbers have been added up properly. It's just another layer of checks, which brings another layer of integrity into the process, so that by the time we do the final tallying, we're all comfortable that the processes prior to that have been properly conducted, and that the elections, the results actually reflect the will of the people of Ghana.
So this is today's big story. Madam Charlotte Osei just enumerated some of the reforms. Indeed, the EC is supposed to have 27 reforms done before the December polls. Key among them is to correct the confusion of overvoting, bring in highly educated people to the electoral offices, and also to bring in the Ghana Bar Association and Institute of Chartered Accountants to help in collating results, and also to jail people who offend the electoral processes for 2 years during the December polls. This is today's big story. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. Have a good evening.